Who is Archidamus? Archidamus is Lord of Bohemia. You also have the dramatis personae, which says, yes, a Lord of Bohemia, servant. In parenthesis or in bracket, it's written servant. So Archidamus says, if you shall chance, Camelia, to visit Bohemia on the like occasion whereon my services are now on foot, you shall see, as I have said, great difference betwixt our Bohemia and your Sicilia. So right at the beginning, uh, notice how Shakespeare is introducing the plot, introducing the main characters. The most important characters in the play are not brought on the stage directly. They are introduced by reference. So Archidamus, who is a lord of Bohemia, is referring to the great difference betwixt our Bohemia and your Sicilia, where Bohemia is actually the Bohemian king, Polixenes, and Sicilia is the king of Sicilia, Leontes. Okay, so he is referring to the great difference, what he mentions as the great difference between Leontes and Polixenes. Okay, so if you have the edition that I have, which is quite a good edition, look at the annotation here. What is meant by difference? What is meant by difference? Difference of culture as well as terrain and climate, because Bohemia is not Sicilia, right? Geographically, they are different, and therefore their climate conditions are different, their cultures are different. So probably Archidamus is referring to the cultural as well as climatic and geographical difference. Okay, so culture as well as terrain and climate. So difference, uh, this is one meaning of the word difference here, and there might be other meanings as well. For example, difference also means row or disagreement. So when he is referring to the difference betwixt Bohemia and Sicilia, maybe he is referring to a kind of disagreement, or perhaps a kind of disagreement that prefigures a coming conflict between the kings of Bohemia and Sicilia. So uh, later in the play, we are going to see how uh, a kind of conflict emerges between Leontes and Polixenes. Okay, so that conflict, that disagreement, that discord, that uh, kind of misunderstanding is prefigured here. So right at the beginning of the play, you have this word difference. Difference, বাংলায় ডিফারেন্সের মানে হচ্ছে তফাৎ বা ফারাক. Okay, but difference can also mean conflict. So if I have difference with anyone, that means that I'm in a situation of conflict with that person. Okay, now Camilio gives an important piece of information, and these pieces of information, as you know, uh, are called reports. So things happen on the stage, but even before they begin to happen, we are given certain information regarding what is going to take place and who are the main characters and how those characters are going to act. Okay, so we have an indication towards the beginning of every Shakespearean play. You remember Macbeth? Macbeth appears on stage in Act 1, Scene 3, I think, and before that he is referred to. He is referred to as a valiant cousin and Bellona's bridegroom, and he's portrayed as someone who is very brave and very courageous and very selfless kind of a person. Okay, so here we get information regarding what is going to happen from the next scene, and Camillo says, I think this coming summer the king of Sicilia means to pay Bohemia the visitation which he justly owes him. So he says that this coming summer, king of Sicilia, which is Leontes, wants to pay Polixenes a visit. Okay, so summer. Remember, the name of the play is Winter's Tale. You have a reference to season here. So, what does summer mean? It means it indicates that perhaps Acts 1 to Acts 3 of this play are set in winter, and Acts 4 to Act 4 to Act 5 are set in summer. Okay, so that is a seasonal distribution in this play. So Act 1 to Act 3 happens in winter, and that is why he is anticipating the coming summer when King of Sicilia uh, is going to pay King of Bohemia a visit. Okay. Okay. Now, also notice the word visitation. Visitation, we do not really use this word when I say I want to visit your place. I do not say I want to make a visitation to your place. I say simply I want to visit your place, or are you visiting me? But visitation is actually a social or state visit. Remember, we are talking about kings here, not ordinary people. So it's a social, it's a very socially important event. Okay, so it's a visitation, but visitation also has a reference of inspection. Inspection, example into heraldic pedigrees. So perhaps Camillio is teasing Archidamus that Cecilia's court plans to check up on the Bohemians. So it has two meanings. This word visitation. Visitation. The first meaning is social or state visit, and the second meaning is kind of inspection into heraldic pedigrees. Okay, heraldic pedigrees, and uh, so perhaps Camillo is saying this in jest. He is actually joking, and he is teasing Archidamus that the kingdom of Sicilia is going to check up on the Bohemian court. Okay, there is yet another meaning of this word, which is retribution or punishment. And again, this idea or this theme of punishment is going to be an important theme in this play. So notice how Shakespeare is uh, using words and phrases in the very first scene of the play that prefigures, that anticipates further or future developments in the play. And this is a very clever way of doing it, actually. Okay, so um, Archidamus answers by saying, wherein our entertainment shall shame us, we will be justified in our loves, which basically means that in whatever ways the welcome and hospitality we extend is deficient, our love must suffice for that. So if we are not enough hospitable, if we are not welcoming them with enough hospitality and warmth, our love uh, for them is going to be sufficient, is going to make up for that, compensate for that. Okay, so justified, this word justified, and justified is a response to justly. Archidamus actually attempts to match Camillio's exactness and propriety, because Camillio noticed that he is very courteous and very very polite, and okay, very very graceful in his choice of words and phrases. So he is being uh, matched by what Archidamus is saying, who is also trying to be just as courteous and noble. Okay, so Camillio's um, exactness and propriety is something that impresses Archidamus, and he is trying to match up to that. Okay, so uh, okay, justified also means acquitted or absolved. So Archidamus may intend a witty allusion to the doctrine of salvation by faith and God's grace rather than good works. That is, it will be your mercy, not your efforts, that redeem the sin of our unworthy hospitality. So what he is meaning here is that if we are not hospitable enough, if we are not good hosts, if we turn out to be bad hosts, it will be like a sin, but we will try to compensate it with our love. We will try to compensate or make up for the lack of hospitality with the genuine love and passion we have for you. Okay, so Camillo interrupts by saying, beseech you, but Archidamus, what is beseech? Beseech, what does the word beseech mean? Any idea? Okay, beseech means please. Okay, I beg you. It's a polite word of politeness, a polite attempt to stem the effusiveness that Archidamus uh, expresses or reveals in his speech. Camillo is almost like, okay, enough of the courtesy, enough of the politeness, enough of the formality. But Archidamus goes on, verily, I speak it in the freedom of my knowledge. We cannot with such magnificence in so rare. I know not what to say. We will give you sleepy drinks that your senses, unintelligent of our insufficiency, may, though they cannot praise us as little accuse us. So what Archidamus means to say is, uh, even if they are not good hosts, they will ensure that the guests get to have good drinks, and they drink so much that they don't even notice the lack of hospitality. Okay, so this conversation actually reveals that, uh, or rather, it establishes the idea that the kingdom of Bohemia and the kingdom of Sicilia are in very good terms, and the kings of those respective kingdoms have been childhood friends, and there is a very great bond of love and friendship between them. And Camillo representing Sicilia and Archidamus representing Bohemia expresses their gratitude, not only gratitude but also courtesy in the way they are speaking to each other and in the way they are anticipating the meeting that will take place between the respective kings. Okay, so Archidamus says, Camillo says, you pay a great deal too dear for what's given freely. Okay, yes, and then you have Archidamus saying, believe me, I speak as my understanding instructs me and as mine honesty puts it to utterance. So I'm I'm telling you what I'm feeling, what I'm not putting on a pretense. I'm not saying all this out of mere formality, but these are my heartfelt words. So my knowledge informs me, and my integrity obliges me to say what I am saying. These are not decorous speeches. These are not formal speeches. These are coming out from directly from my heart. Okay, so Camillo says, Sicilia cannot show himself overkind to Bohemia. They were trained together in their childhoods, and there rooted betwixt them then such an affection which cannot lose but branch now. Okay, so here we get an information that the king of Bohemia and the king of Sicilia were trained together. Now, the word trained uh, refers to the idea of being trained, getting a training, but this is the Elizabethan meaning of this word is educated. Okay, make a note of this. Trained means educated. Okay, and there is also a slight pun in the word, because it means that perhaps both the kings of Bohemia and Sicilia were on the same train or king's retinue. So it is therefore also a metaphor, and the metaphor that follows it actually is a botanical metaphor. Okay, a natural image, and the metaphor is of vines or trees grown alongside each other on a trellis. Notice this word. They were trained together in their childhoods, which means to say they went to the same school, they got educated in a similar fashion, in the same institute perhaps, and they are rooted betwixt them then such an affection which cannot choose but branch now. So this word rooted and the word which follows branch in the same line are drawn from nature, of course. So, rooted refers to the depth of their bonding or friendship, and branches refer to the kind of flourish, the growth, okay, of their love, the affection. Also, the word affection is important, and it's a very important word, a key word with meanings that include deeply um, uh, fraternal love, which means love that exists between two brothers, okay, uh, or familial love. But in a way, it also suggests perhaps overwhelming sexual desire, the power of the mind, intense emotional longing and disposition. So it can mean a lot of things, affection, because this word recurs throughout the play and throughout Shakespeare's canon. So it is charged with a lot of meanings. So first meaning is, of course, deep fraternal love, which is, I think, more obvious because we do not uh, immediately think of Polixenes and Leontes to have been lovers, but more like friends and brothers. So fraternal love is the meaning of the word affection, and that is the sense in which it is used. And then Camillo continues, since their more mature dignities and royal necessities made separation of their society, uh, their encounters, though not personal, had been royally attorneyed with interchange of gifts, letters, loving embassies, that they have seemed to be together, though absent, shook hands as over a vast and embraced, as it were, from the ends of opposite winds. Okay, a rather long sentence, which means that afterwards, when they grew up as adults, and when their rank and demands on them as kings were bestowed. So, in other words, when they grew up and became kings, they got busy with their individual royal duties, and therefore they did not meet often after that. But they kept the relationship going, the friendship going through letters, through gifts, and loving embassies. And although they were absent from each other, although they didn't really meet each other, there was no lack of warmth and genuineness of friendship between them. Okay, so they had no contact with one another. uh, the word encounter refers to contact that that is usually there between friends. Okay, and then you have personal, the word personal, which means in person. So though not personal, which means though they did not meet in person, though they were absent from one another physically. Okay, personal means in person. Okay, and embassies refer to messages through ambassadors, because in those days there was no WhatsApp or email or messages. If you wanted to send someone a message, you had to write a letter and get hold of someone, a messenger, to deliver that letter. So, embassies means messages sent through ambassadors. Okay, and yes, that's what. Okay, and then you have the image of winds shaking hands as over a vast and embraced, as it were, from the ends of opposed winds. So let's have a look at the annotation given here in this book. Images of growth at lines 23 and 24 are followed by an emblem and a symbol from a map. The first from a printer's device of hands extended in friendship from opposite clouds. The second from maps that showed cherubs as the winds blowing from each corner. And the symbolic handshake, shook hands as over a past, the symbolic handshake, anticipating, is parallel with hand fasting, that is, men and women taking hands in betrothal. Betrothal. Okay? And then he continues, the heavens continue their loves. Archidamus responds by saying, I think there is not in the world either malice or matter to alter it. So, no malice, no matter, no problem, no quarrel will ever come between Leontes and Polixenes, because their friendship, the base, the foundation of their friendship is so strong that nothing will alter it. Of course, this is a situational irony. This is a verbal irony as well, because we know that things are going to change between uh, Leontes and Polixenes. They are going to have great misunderstandings for no reason at all, and the reason will seem to you very, very superfluous. Okay. And then you have an unspeakable comfort of your young prince Mamilius. This is also a piece of information given in the first scene of the play in the form of a report. So Mamilius happens to be the young prince, the son of Leontes. I don't know if it's there in the chart. Perhaps it is there. I don't know. No, it is not. Yes, it is there. It is there. Mamilius, son of Leontes and Hermione. Can you see it? Mamilius. On the left side of the chart, the second name.
Yes, sir.
Yes, son of Leontes and Hermione. And also you have the keys to designate what these arrows mean. So Mamilius is related to Leontes and Hermione uh, in a familial way. Okay, there are other relationships suggested by other kinds of arrows. So for example, the straight arrow refers to a relationship of love, and you have a kind of a wavy kind of an arrow which signifies friendship, and you have a geometric kind of an arrow which signifies family. So Mamilius is in the family because he is the son of Leontes and Hermione. Okay, okay then. You have an unspeakable comfort of your young prince Mamilius. It is a gentleman of the greatest promise that ever came into my note. So Mamilius is the young prince, and all eyes are on Mamilius, and uh, he is loved by everyone, and uh, he is referred to very interestingly as a gentleman. Now, we do not use the word gentleman to describe children, do we? And he is actually quite young. If you watch when you watch the theatrical version of this play, you will see that he is just a boy. He is just a young boy, but he is referred to as a gentleman, which was a custom then, back then, in the Elizabethan and the Jacobean era. You come across certain words that we do not use in in we use them, but we use them in different ways. So gentleman, the word gentleman here refers to quality, behavior, and not rank, not age either. So it refers to a quality in a person, and that person can be a child as well. This is very interesting that the words and the adjectives we use to describe children are different from the words we use to describe adults, right? So gentleman, we cannot really call a young boy a gentleman. For in order to be a gentleman, one has to grow old. Okay, grow up to be an adult. So gentleman in the Elizabethan Jacobean sense refers to quality and behavior, not rank. And also probably it meant a term of endearment. Okay, endearment, that is, this lad, your prince, is the king's most promising servant. In that sense it is used here. It is a gentleman of the greatest promise that ever came into my notes. So he is a wonderful little boy. He is so full of good behavior. Okay, good behavior. That is a gentleman-like quality in that boy, Mamilius. So who is Mamilius? Mamilius is the son of Hermione and Leontes. Who is Leontes? Leontes is the king of Sicilia. Okay. And then I very well agree with you. So there are a few lines regarding Mamilius. What is Mamilius like? So Mamilius, why is he being referred to here? I think it will be sufficiently clear from the next speech by Camillo that he is seen to be an embodiment of the future of Cecilia, because he is a young boy, and he every person is looking up to him. All eyes are on Mamilius, that he will grow up to be a king one day. He will take his father's place. Okay, so there is a sense of anticipation that is building, which is sufficiently clear from what Camillo says. So he says, I very well agree with you in the hopes of him. So I agree with you that there is great hope in Mamilius. It is a gallant child. Again, you have a word which we use to describe an adult person being used to describe a child here. So, what does the word gallant mean? It means polished and courtier like. Again, well behaved, gentlemanly, and also splendid and excellent, and also daring. So many meanings compressed into one word, gallant. So he is a fine young fellow who is very promising, and everyone is expecting him to grow up and take his father's position and be a very good king. It is a gallant child, one that indeed physics the subject. Physics is used as a verb here. Now, physics, as you know, is a subject, but physic also means medicine. The word physic, 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 and a kind of a medicine or a tonic. So, when he says that it is a gallant child, one that indeed physics the subject, it means that he acts as a tonic uh, for for his nation. Okay, I don't know if you remember in Macbeth, the English king, who does not really appear on the stage, is referred to a physic. So it's like Macbeth is the disease that has spread across Scotland because he is an evil tyrant. And in order to cure that disease, you need to have the English king who is a physic, the medicine or the cure or the tonic. So Mamilius is that physic that reinvigorates Sicily. Okay, physics in this sense, physics, the subject, is a verb, or it could also mean medicates. And this line is very important. I think you should mark it because this is related directly to the key theme in the play, the most important theme, that youth renews life. Youth renews life, giving older people uh, closer to death a reason to live. So older people are given a reason to live by the youth, by the young people. So Mamilius is that medicine. Mamilius is a reason for older people to continue to live in the expectation of something wonderful that is going to take place in the future. So the older people of the kingdom are living, as it were, in the hope to see Mamilius grown up. So indeed, it is a gallant child, one that indeed physics the subject, makes old hearts fresh. So old hearts fresh, old people are given fresh hope. They that went on crutches ere he was born desire yet their life to see him a man. So those people who were uh, on their crutches, that is to say, who were really very old, even before he was born, now that he is a boy, is expecting to live a few extra years to see him a man. Okay, so Mamilius is established as a very important figure uh, who embodies the future of Sicily, I think. uh, Archidamus asks, would they else be content to die? Yes, if there were no other excuse why they should desire to live. So what he means is that they are they now that Mamilius is in the picture, Mamilius is a boy full of possibilities, the young prince. They are willing to live a few more extra years in order to uh, see him grown up. So their desire to live is fueled by the presence of Mamilius. Archidamus ends this scene by saying, if the king had no son, they would desire to live on crutches till he had one. So uh, maybe he's qualifying Camilio's hyperbole. I don't know if you know what is a hyperbole. Hyperbole is a kind of an exaggeration. Okay, an exaggeration. So Camilio's speech that the older people are living in the hope of seeing Mamilius as a king is a kind of a hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. No one really does that. Okay, so there are other bigger reasons to go on living in hope. So maybe Archidamus is qualifying Camilio's hyperbole that old people would be content to die, but for the prospect of seeing Mamilius become king. So even without him, Archidamus says they would struggle on, waiting for a male heir, that is, the old use the young, if, even their children, as an excuse for surviving. So even if Mamilius wasn't in the picture, old people generally live in hope because they look at the young people, look at youth, and they find an excuse to go on living. That is what Archidamus is meaning to say. So let's come to the second scene of the play, which happens in an open court, which is kind of semi-public, or perhaps in the private, because there is a section in this play, a section in this scene where there is a great deal of candidness, candid speeches, candid uh, uh, lines being exchanged, and those lines uh, are somewhat intimate, and those lines suggest that perhaps they were not spoken in presence of servants, and that is why it is assumed that this scene could be taking place in private. Anyway, let's come to what the scene is about. So, nine changes, and this is Polixenes, the king of Bohemia, right? So, the king of Bohemia, Polixenes, appears for the first time in this scene, and what he says, his first line refers to one of the main themes of this play, which is time, the passage of time, the power of time, the triumph of time. Remember the subtitle of Pandosto, Robert Greene's Pandosto, which actually inspired this play, The Triumph of Time. So, nine changes of the watery star had been the shepherd's note since we have left our throne. So, he is referring to the duration of time that he has been away from his kingdom, from Bohemia. And nine changes of the watery star means watery star, which is the watery star? Moon. So 9 changes of the moon, which means 9 months have passed. 9 months have passed, and the moon is watery because it influences tides. You know this, all of you, that the moon has great influence on ebb and flow of water bodies. So it influences tides, and that is why it is referred to as a watery star. Okay, it's kind of a circumlocution. I don't know if you've heard of this figure of speech, circumlocution. It's a roundabout way, a rather poetic way of describing something that is actually very simple. The moon is referred to as a watery star. So, moon uh, was traditionally associated with uh, two goddesses, the goddess Diana and the goddess Lucina, and they were goddesses of chastity and childbirth. Okay, so remember 9 months related to the gestation period, childbirth, and Polixenes may have in mind Hermione's pregnancy, because when this play is taking place, when the play has started, and in very soon we are going to see Hermione, she is pregnant. So perhaps there is a connection between the phrase 9 changes of the watery star with Hermione's pregnancy. Anyway, Polixenes doesn't really connect the interval he has been with them to her condition. So there is no direct comparison or connection that is established, but we are we are reminded of the opening lines of Polixenes when we see that uh, Hermione has an advanced stage of pregnancy. Anyway, so regarding pregnancy, we must note that the appearance of upper class Elizabethan women when pregnant was celebrated rather than thought indelicate. So pregnant women sometimes would appear in public, and there was no shame, or there was no sense of indelicacy. No one used to say that you shouldn't do this, you should live indoors. In fact, they like to celebrate it. Pregnancy was something to be celebrated socially. Okay, so 9 changes of the watery star had been the shepherd's note since we have left our throne. So uh, I have been away from my country, from my kingdom, for the last 9 months. So the shepherd's note since we have left our throne. The shepherd has seen 9 changes of the moon. That is what he means to say. What about this burden? Without a burden? What he means is, since I left my throne unoccupied, that is, since I ruled in person, uh, the left is now devoid of my physical burden. So it's empty. Without a burden means it's empty now. It does not have my physical weight on it. Okay. Um, so also note that Polixenes begins with we and our. Okay, plural. Uh, uh, the 9 changes of the watery star had been the shepherd's note since we have left our throne. We have left our throne. So plural, not I have left my throne, but we. So it's a kind of a royal we. You know, even in I think Hindi or Urdu, royal people use the word hum instead of मैं. Okay, sometimes they do that. So plural is royal, used by kings. Polixenes begins with we and our, for I and my. Okay, and plural pronouns used like this were exclusive in royalty, just like I said, but he switches to the more informal I at line 7. Okay, when he says, and therefore like a cipher yet standing in a rich place, I multiply with one we thank you many thousands more that go before it. Okay, so very interesting to note the use of pronouns here. Okay, and then he says, time as long again would be filled up, my brother, with our thanks, and yet we should for perpetuity go hence in death. Uh, so it means that it would take me as long again, that is another 9 months, to thank you, brother. And it was very common for kings to refer to other kings as brothers. And even then, I would depart forever in your debt. So the kind of hospitality I have received for the last 9 months, it would take me another 9 months to repay the debt.